GM guys, and welcome to another episode of Crypto Q&A. And as you can see, back by popular demand, I've got the man, the myth, the legend, Guy, back on with us. Guy, welcome back, man. It's been a minute, eh?
Thanks, Nick. Yes, it has. I don't see where this popular demand is coming from, but I think if you say so, I'll take
No, definitely. I see all the fans. I read all the comments. Like, where is Guy? We need him back here with us. I want him to answer our questions.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. So thank you, of course, for submitting your questions. We've got quite a lot to cover today, so we'll be diving right in. Guy, do you want to kick off, man?
Yeah, man. So the first question is from TK98. Will Uniswap survive the SEC?
The dreaded SEC. Will they survive? I don't think they'll survive. I think they will thrive.
Okay, cool.
I think they'll thrive.
I think that.
Yeah, I'm getting worried there. Yeah. No, to be honest, I think that a lot of the analysis I've seen post, and obviously if you guys don't know what's happened, Uniswap about 2 weeks ago, they got the Wells notice. The Wells notice is usually the precursor to the SEC potentially suing a crypto or a company. And this, in about 80% of the time it happens. So obviously this was, the point in the matter is, and so the analysis I've seen post this, is that they couldn't have gone after a better actor in the space. Like Uniswap is revered, they're loved, the crypto community is strongly behind them. Even the mainstream press and narrative after this is kind of like, these are, crypto developers, they're struggling to try and find their way in a very archaic legal system, and they fight in the good fight for crypto. So the whole narrative, and obviously all the crypto, lobbyists and all the crypto companies and the crypto community is behind Uniswap here, because it is quite an egregious action by the SEC. But aside from the narrative and stuff, it's the question around the legal grounds with which they have to go. The SEC has to go after them. And there's quite a few podcasts. I mean, I'll recommend one from Laura Shin about a week ago where she interviewed a lawyer about this. But in terms of what the SEC's case they've got, and obviously they're trying to bring, what they assume they will try and bring, is the question around whether Uniswap is offering or broker in unregistered securities. Yeah. Right, and they're not naming the securities; they're making the same assumption they did with the Coinbase lawsuit back in 2022, which is that all these, they're not going to name the particular assets or crypto assets, but they're taking the line that all of these are crypto securities. But the problem is that in the recent dismissal suit for the SEC's case against Coinbase, the judge explicitly stated that Coinbase wallet, which is kind of akin to a non-custodial technology that people can use to facilitate transactions. They can actually push their own transactions. It's not like, it can't be seen as any sort of broker. It's just a piece of technology. It's a code. So the judge has actually stated that. So that's one thing that SEC is going to have trouble trying to prove. Uniswap is nothing more than a piece of code that facilitates a transfer. They're not routing the orders themselves. They're not helping to determine where it goes. So they're not a broker. They can't be viewed as a broker.
Yeah.
And then there's also the question they think about potentially the SEC could look at the Uni airdrop as some sort of a an unregistered security offering. But even in that case, it's very difficult because part of the analysis is that they'll try and look at a previous example where in old securities law, where if a company offers free stock, it's an incentive for people to increase the value of the stock by holding it. But even in this case, on that case, it was based on the assumption that there were stocks which are actual securities defined as securities. In this case, they're not defined as a security. So, I think that it's going to have a very tough time, the SEC to take on Uniswap. I think that they kind of expected it was coming. There was always these concerns that it was going to come. This is why Uniswap, if you recall, even 2 years or 3 years ago, they restricted certain stock-based tokens. Yeah. They took it off their platform, at least the front end. But I think that the SEC is going to have a tough time here. Uniswap is got a lot of the community behind them. They've got strong, I assume, a very big legal team that's going to help them out with this. Well-resourced.
They're very profitable.
Exactly. Yeah. And they've got big investors. A16Z is a big investor. I mean, it's unfortunate that the SEC wants to go after the good actors in the space, the ones that are actually coming to them, asking for clarity.
Yeah. When you consider all the other entities the SEC could have gone after and could secure a much easier win against. I won't name any names, but some of them would be fairly obvious to viewers. Like when you consider what the SEC could have gone after, and they go after Uniswap, it's madness. But as we've pointed out, we did the video on is Ether security, because obviously the SEC is also sort of nosing around elements of Ethereum's ecosystem. And as we said, it's not Gary Gensler who's the main villain in all this. It's Gurbir Grewal, the SEC's head of enforcement, who, from what we could tell, doesn't really understand crypto.
No.
So maybe that explains why they've gone for Uniswap. It's sort of the only one that he's probably aware of that the SEC hasn't already sued.
I think it's also kind of like the organizations that seem to get sued are the ones that are actually proactively going there asking for clarity.
Yeah.
So
it's like, crazy, isn't it? It's almost like it reminds the SEC that they're there and they're just sort of lashing out.
Knock on the door. Oh, God, no, can you please give us clarity? Please give us clarity. No, we're going to give you a Wells notice, But the SEC's taken on a bit more than they can chew. I mean, they're not only facing Uniswap now, they've also... Did you hear about that story about that bag? There was this...
Oh, yeah. I forget the name of the company, but they're sort of proactively suing them.
They're proactively suing them. And I saw a headline as well just this morning.
Consensus
is also going after them. So they've really bitten off more than they can chew. Like the SEC, the crusade against crypto, they don't have the public on their side, I don't think. I mean, I don't know who they actually... Maybe they've got some banks who usually, the rotating door to the SEC and banks. And maybe it's because if you think in viewing it as like a top-down and Gary Gensler still wants to appear strong on crypto, maybe he still has his eyes on the treasury spot. I think that in the long answer to your question is Uniswap is going... They couldn't have taken on a more forbidding opponent, so... Yeah, I think no, they're going to have a tough time, the SEC.
Yeah. And of course, it's going to be very difficult for the SEC or anyone else to restrict access to Uniswap. I mean, I guess you can try and restrict access to the front end.
Yeah.
But like the front end is just the front end. The protocol itself is immutable.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they can always host it on IPFS. There's other ways of doing this. So, as a permissionless protocol, there are many ways that people can use it. Same thing like Tornado Cash, they even sanctioned it, but people could still use it. So, that's the beauty of permissionless protocols.
Yeah.
Cool. Good question. Next one is from By Dane, and he's asking, all speculation aside, what crypto tech do you actually use the most and believe in its longevity?
That's a good question. I think probably the one that I use the most, or the one that has the most of my mind share as well, is Bitcoin, because it's permissionless finance. As we're seeing with this recent business with Samurai Wallet, the ability to hold your own money outside of a bank, outside of anyone else's control, is getting more and more important by the day at the moment. So I use Bitcoin, kind of every day for storing wealth. That's my principal means of saving. Obviously, it's a very volatile means of saving, but it's worked pretty well for me so far. So there's that. I use stable coins for payments a lot. I find I just think the idea of paying. I had to do an international bank transfer the other day.
Yeah.
It took hours, and they charged me £10.
And you could get lost.
Yeah, and when I think I could have sent that amount in stable coins in minutes for pennies, I just thought, this is ridiculous. How much longer can this last? But the vested interests of the banking system are pretty strong, so it will last for a long time. But I think those two for me are, they're the clearest and they're the simplest. The idea of being able to move potentially millions of dollars, but in my case a few hundred or a few thousand. But the idea of being able to move money across the world, peer to peer, and pay minimal fees, I think it's still extraordinary, even 15 years after Bitcoin was invented. So that's two for me. Yeah,
100%. And that was one of the reasons why I ever got into crypto, is the knowing that it's like actually trying to do international transfers. A great example, because just think about how the SWIFT banking system works. First of all, you got to get the routing numbers right, the SWIFT number right. Some countries aren't fully plugged into SWIFT properly. It takes 2 or 3 days. You have to send and wish and hope and a prayer that it's going to get there. You have to send and hope that the intermediary banks are going to get it. It's not going to get returned. They're not going to have issues with the particular reference you've used. So payments is a massive one for crypto. And I think that, it's actually interesting. You see that Stripe is now going to offer crypto integration again. So payments is becoming a big thing again, a big narrative. But it's one of those things that I definitely use most often is like payments for crypto, and especially from the fact of being permissionless, and also DeFi. Like if you think about it, the idea that you can actually, if you want to swap a coin, I don't have to go through the rigmarole of logging onto an account, an exchange, go in and doing KYC, all that kind of stuff. Not because I have anything to hide, not because I have a problem with KYC. I've got many exchange accounts, but just the notion that, hey, I want to swap this cool, I want to swap quickly. I want to go and do it through a quick exchange swap on Uniswap or on Trader Joe or on Radium or any sort of DeFi DEX. It's great. It's just such a great feeling, and also just like you know that you can do it anytime, and it's this permissionless finance, which I think is one of the biggest and most the longevity. I believe in that. I guess one more thing, and this is interesting, is like the longevity of potential other crypto use cases that we don't particularly use on the daily, but that could have longevity. And another one that I've seen a lot about is Deepen, obviously. So that's another one, but I don't personally use it, and we'll come back to that with some other questions. But definitely payments, DeFi, permissionless finance, that's always going to have a need and a use case, and especially if you've been exposed and had to deal with the traditional financial system in cross-border, or when you have been debanked, all that kind of stuff, crypto is the future. So,
one day, hopefully not too far away, people will say, did you really used to have to pay 10% to remit money to Africa? Did you really used to have to pay X number of dollars or X number of pounds or whatever to transfer your own money? And it will be like, it's really stuck around.
We'll view it as archaic as we did look at how people did trade 100 years ago, right?
Remittance companies will soon be like blacksmiths.
Are you ready for deals? Are you ready for trading fee discounts? Are you ready to save some money? If the answer is yes, then you're ready for the Coin Bureau Deals page. Yes, Coin Bureau brings you the very best deals and promotions in all of crypto. You won't find offers like these anywhere else. Discounts on the best hardware wallets. Exchange sign-up bonuses of up to $60,000. Trading fee discounts of up to 60%. Coin Bureau's brand new altcoin-focused subscription service. The Coin Bureau Deals page is even better for you than this piece of succulent, protein-rich, nutritious grilled chicken. Head on over to coinbureau.com/deals or click the link in the description below. Don't delay. Check out the Coin Bureau Deals page today. These deals are so hot, I need to cool down. Yeah.
Okay, so SM Mukit asks, do you think both Nia and Sui will go 10x from this point? I should, before either of us say anything, I should say that I hold Nia and Sui. Do you hold either of those?
I do hold both.
Okay.
I hold both. So we both can be completely impartial here in the sense that we both hold them, so we can give a good, impartial view on it. In terms of, so here's the question. Obviously, it's like, do you mean in what time frame?
Yeah.
Because obviously, 10x from this point, yes, I do think so. I mean, if you think crypto is the future, crypto is always going to be there. Unless you think crypto is going to zero, I think these projects are strong projects, and they will 10x. Now, we'll come back. Now, the question is, in this cycle, I think that's a bit difficult, especially where we are in the cycle. Now, let me just say, obviously, why we both hold the projects. I'm bullish on it. Obviously, I'm bullish on Nia because, by the way, we actually got an interview that Jess did with Ilya. The founder and CEO of Nia, which is on the clips, you can view that. And we also recently did a Nia update video. But I'm bullish on Nia because obviously the tech is amazing. They got a good play. They got a good narrative in the AI space now because Ilya is one of the founders of this paper. And obviously the tech is great. Dynamic resharding, Nightshade, the consensus mechanism. But in terms of whether you think that the price could 10x is tokenomics, right? And we've got about $1 billion total outstanding Nia. Right, so and it's at 17 in terms of market cap. So in order to 10x, that's quite a jump in terms of the market cap right now. So we're going to need a lot of buying pressure in the crypto in general in terms of liquidity to come in to push an altcoin like that in its market cap by 10x, right? Yeah. Now, so that's near. And in terms of SUI, you'd think, okay, probably potentially has more potential to reach the 10x because it's at 61 in terms of market cap rankings. But the problem with that is that SUI has only about 13% of the supply outstanding.
Yeah, there's still a lot to unlock.
A 10x on the market cap doesn't equate to, a 10x in the market cap doesn't equate to a 10x on price because and there's a large supply outstanding. And by the way, in about a few days, they're going to be, the Series B round is going to start having a vesting out, right? About 6% of the supply. Admittedly, it's over I think it's 2 years vest out. So it shouldn't have that much of an impact. But that will obviously impact on the circulating supply coming onto the market, which obviously could push up the market cap. But in terms of price, you'd need a lot more buying, even more so than in the near space, on the near case, for example. So, I'm bullish on both projects. Obviously, I hold them. SUI as well. We did a video on it.
Discord
AMA with one of the founders, and he was a super smart guy. And I think that SUI as well is on this whole Move narrative with the Move programming language. That one of the guys who developed Move itself is actually one of the co-founders of SUI. I think it's an L1 and L1 is highly performant. Developers love it. The actual development company, Mr. Labs, has raised a lot of money. So I'm bullish on them from a tech perspective, and I do hold both of them, and I think that they can definitely increase in value in this bull run. But 10x, I think, is a bit more of an ask.
I think we'll need to see like real euphoria in the market, real sort of euphoric speculation for them to 10x. But yeah, we're supposed to call it SWI. I should have SWI. That's how Adani, when Jess interviewed him, SWI. That's how he referred to it. So, yeah,
we need to respect.
If that's what the boss says. So SWI. I think I was bullish on SWI, especially because I think they seem to be really pitching towards Web 2, as in getting Web 2 companies and entities on board into Web 3, and I think that's a potentially huge growth vector. I'm not sure to what extent other layer ones are doing that, and obviously SWI like Aptos, which is another very well backed alt L1. They obviously have a lot of expertise from Facebook.
DM, the DM stable. And I think that your point around the Web 2 onboarding is easier with a project like SWI because obviously the programming language is very easy. And this is what we've heard from devs as well. It's a lot easier to build on the likes of, to build with Move and on SWI.
We actually have a SWI dev in our members Discord, don't we? Who's very knowledgeable about this sort of thing and says that building on SWI is really good. And when you consider that founder of Solana himself said that building on Solana is like chewing glass. I think the developer experience is something that's underrated because that, if you don't have a good developer experience, you're not going to have as much development. So
one thing I do though, in terms of potentially challenge the likes of SWI and Aptos in terms of this question around Move and the ease of using the programming language, is other solutions which are leveraging the language to be able to use them within other protocols and stuff. And one of these obviously is Movement Labs, and they recently just completed a 35 million raise. We invested in as well, and they're developing this modular Move-based blockchains to leverage Move, and other projects can use it, so it can make easier for development on their blockchain. So that's also something that could potentially be a challenge to these L1s. Cool. And speaking of L1s, we've got Selvin De Silva, and he's asking, will layer one narrative work this bull run as well?
That is a good question. L1s, alt L1s were a big narrative last time around, and obviously Solana sort of led the charge there and kind of still is, really, isn't it? And I guess you could say that this time around, perhaps Solana, last time it was Ethereum killers like Solana. This time around, there's a lot of talk around Solana killers. Like, for instance, SWI, Aptos, there's another one as well that's gone out of my head. So there's definitely room for that narrative, but I think the L1 space is becoming increasingly congested now.
Saturated.
And it's about, I think for L1s, it's about focusing on a particular narrative. And I think those that capture a particular narrative will do well. So Solana seems to be focusing very much well. Solana's got sort of multi-focus, hasn't it? But it seems to be kind of honing in on payments. Obviously, you talked about this USDC integration recently. Solana's long been big for stablecoins, meme coins as well, and also deep in. Near, on the other hand, is kind of going after AI. Avalanche is kind of targeting gaming.
Gaming and RWAs as well,
RWAs, yeah. So I think picking winners from this crop of L1s is going to be harder. I don't plan on adding any other L1s to my portfolio. Sui and Near were my kind of last buys in that. And I think, and even after that, you then get into the talk around kind of modular or monolithic, which is now becoming a thing. Modular, this idea of kind of, making it basically less complicated, sort of taking different elements out, and it's more sort of plug and play. So you have rather than have a blockchain that kind of does everything, you have a blockchain that does one thing and then it leverages other blockchains for various things, like, for instance, leveraging Celestia for data availability or what it might be. So that kind of further complicates it as well. Are you going to go for a monolithic blockchain like Solana? Which could be, which could now be seen as sort of yesterday's news, or is it you're going to chase a modular play like Celestia?
No, I totally agree with you. I think that the modular play is the one to focus on for the rest of the cycle, because I think that we've always been thinking about the whole scalability trilemma, and that's what's always been plaguing, or one of the big conundrums that a blockchain and L1 will face. It's like, how do you go without impacting on security? Decentralization, the security, decentralization. What was the third one? Scalability, of course. So those three parts of the trilemma, those three legs of the chair, if you can't go with one without compromising on the other. What's cool about modularity is that you can use these protocols can actually function and hone and refine the different stacks. So you've got the execution layer, you've got the data availability, the settlement, and all these layers. Basically, they can refine the layers and actually work on the best tech for that particular layer. And then other blockchains and other builders and dApp developers can leverage different protocols to be able to build the best and most highly performant dApps that don't have to compromise on any one of the three parts of the scalability trilemma. And I think that there's a lot of projects that are focused on that right now. Not just Celestia, but like Lava Network, I just mentioned, Movement, this idea that you can use these plug and play. And to think about it, a good analogy is that I've seen is think about like reduction plants, right? Like you got one production plant, like they produce the whole car, right? Every single component in the car. Whereas now, and with like, think about like Airbus and how they produce an aircraft, right? All of these different plants bring in different components. The guys will specialize on the wings in Spain, and the guys will specialize in the engines in the UK, and the wheels will be developed in Germany. And these production plants will specialize in very specific components that make up a piece of engineering feat that will, is the Airbus aircraft. So you can view the same way as blockchains, right? And do we have to have these separate L1s that are all competing to try and produce the latest highly performant consensus mechanism and brag about their TPS, when you can just leverage different technologies that focus on different parts of the stack? So I'm bullish on modularity.
Just basically doing one thing and doing it really well.
Exactly.
Rather than trying to do
specializing. The whole Adam Smith, the specialization of labor. The history of capitalism is refined now down to cryptocurrency blockchains as well.
I'm glad you used Airbus as an example there rather than Boeing.
Boeing, exactly. Which is probably a good example of where things can go bad as well, if you outsource in too much.
Okay, next question is from Arnold Thomas, 78. Sell in May and go away, ?
Yeah, that's interesting. This is obviously something that comes from TradFi. It's been, it's also called the Halloween effect, in terms of, crypto starts doing very well after November. And it's actually a bit of research on this. It goes back centuries. In the 17th century UK, the concept of sell in May and go away. Basically, traders in the city of London would sell their stocks in May and then they'd go to the countryside for their summer retreats, because they can't actually. In those days, obviously, you can't know what you're not trading the stocks, you can't view the stocks, you can't manage them whilst you're away from the stock exchange. So they would go to their country homes and then they'd come back. It was actually called sell in May and go away and come back in St. Leger's Day. And obviously St. Leger's is like one of these horse races that happened around September time.
Oh yeah. Oh, the Saint. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the Saint Leger, Saint Ledger, something
Saint
like
Ledger's,
that?
maybe I'm pronouncing, but yeah, Saint Ledger's or Saint Leger's. Essentially, so that was the history of it, and it goes back many years. And the question now is, it's also there've been many studies done, and does this actually work? And is this the case in TradFi and stocks and stuff? And it's more pronounced in Europe. But even in the US, they did studies from 1990. The returns you'd see from May to September are about 2% on average, and from November to April about 7%. So statistically significant. Of course, the question then comes down to how much of this is actual. Obviously, there's no point. There's not the same drivers as they did in England back in the day. It's obviously this notion of self-fulfilling prophecies. People think about it and they'll do it. And
now it's a thing.
And also there's been past performance is not an indicator of future returns, and there's been many examples where in summer you've had crazy rallies. 2020 is a good example as well. Now that's just the history of it when it comes to stocks, and obviously you obviously, I assume you're interested in it from the perspective of crypto. We are after all a crypto channel, and then this just comes back to the question of do crypto follow stocks? Does crypto follow stocks, and what's the correlation like? And is it a risk on or a risk off asset? I think that more recently, I'm erring onto the side that the investor class in cryptocurrency is kind of bifurcated, where you've got some investors who focused on it from a risk off perspective, a hedge to financial instability in terms of what happened recently last year when you had, for instance, the banking crisis, people rallied towards Bitcoin and crypto. And correlation in cryptocurrency assets to stocks has been coming down more recently this year. So I think that my view is that these two investor classes are going to kind of like compete in the next few months in terms of those who are looking for liquidity, need to be risk on, are going to allocate to Bitcoin and crypto, potentially through ETFs in their risk on bucket. And those who exist in the risk off category are like, I need a hedge that's akin to gold, that can protect me from, for instance, geopolitical instability, high inflation, that kind of stuff. So the answer to your question is, I think that in stocks you may see it play out potentially if people still have this view, and especially now the stocks have sold off, they may continue, liquidity is not in, Fed pivot is delayed out, but I don't know if necessarily it's going to have the similar impact on crypto because of all the factors I just mentioned around risk on and risk off.
Yeah. I suppose what would be interesting to see now that the ETFs, the spot ETFs, seem to have brought in like a new class of, if you like, TradFi investment, TradFi capital into crypto. Yeah. Will they behave with those ETF stocks like they behave with regular stocks?
Yeah.
So will we see a sell-off from the ETFs? Will we see outflows, which will obviously result in the market taking a downturn? And of course, there's been lots of talk in the last sort of few weeks and months, hasn't there, about a potential liquidity crisis around May anyway, because of macro things like the emptying of the or the refilling, I should say, of the TGA. Yeah. So I think perhaps if those two combined, if those TradFi investors looked ahead and thought, well, it's probably best to have some liquidity ahead of a liquidity crisis. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think that, for sure. It's going to be very specific factors at play this time that could definitely reinforce this notion of May being a bad month in both crypto and stocks. But whether it's something to focus on in the future and use it as a benchmark to invest, sell everything in May, well, you could miss out on a good rally like we saw in 2020, etc. So,
If in doubt, hodl.
Yeah, if in doubt, hodl.
If in doubt, hodl. Let the TradFi people, let all the pro investors
revert to mean, exactly. Yeah. Just go away to your country home in England. Don't look at your crypto portfolio. Don't open CoinMarketCap and just come back in November. And
just go and chill in the country for a few months. It'll be fine. We'll take care of it.
And if it's completely crashed, go back. Enjoy spend the winter there.
Just spend as long as you need to in the country until everything's fine again.
Cool. Okay. So the next question is from Z-Slot ZZB. And he's asking, would you change your current mobile network provider to a blockchain-based one like WM, which I assume is World Mobile?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Would I? Yeah. Hell yeah.
Okay.
Hell yeah. I mean, I know things like World Mobile, projects like World Mobile are already operating in quite a number of places, Zanzibar notably, but also the US. parts of Asia, Pakistan. I think World Mobile has a big footprint there. I do actually own some WMT now,
Good.
so I should say that. But yeah, I would definitely use. I mean, I think I did look into using helium back when I was in London.
Yeah.
That was back when there was a hardware crisis because we had supply chains all snarled up because of COVID.
Yeah.
And it was impossible to get your hands on one of these hotspot devices.
Yeah.
Which was kind of frustrating. But yeah, I would definitely, if a plan became available, I would, and I'd be willing to pay, a little bit more than I would from one of the big networks.
Because that would be my next question. It's like, and this is a question of where the indifference curve lies, in the sense that how much more would you be willing to pay for a crypto or blockchain-based mobile network over your current one? Mm-hmm. And how much more would you be willing to sacrifice in terms of, this is just a hypothetical, potential coverage?
I mean, it would definitely have to work. Like, I wouldn't pay more for something that didn't work as well.
Okay.
So the performance would have to be equal. Yeah. But I would be willing to pay more as an advocate for blockchain. I would be willing to pay more if I was getting the same or, dare say, better service.
So
that's for sure. Perhaps I'd be willing to pay a bit less if the service wasn't so great. But I mean, connectivity is so important now.
Yeah, it's so important.
If you can't get it, it's almost like if you're someone like us, who's used to these sort of things in life, being unconnected is just a disaster.
Imagine how crazy it will be if your pursuit of adopting blockchain technology is the reason that you can't check CoinMarketCap because you don't have network. It's like, God damn it.
That would be the most painful irony.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, I think I would as well. I think that also you mentioned World Mobile. Obviously, there's Helium, and you mentioned Helium as well. They've released in the US $20 plan.
Yeah,
a trial period in Miami, which is much better than some of the other providers. So, definitely in that case, not only does it make sense from a financial perspective, but and there's also they pay backup if you're in another place. It leverages the T-Mobile network.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be out without coverage. So yeah, if they had the opportunity, if any of these mobile network providers provide a solution here in Dubai, and as long as the coverage is as good and you can use it in other places, and they have partner networks that they're able to leverage their networks as well and their infrastructure, then I would for sure. I think it's one of these things you want to be able to use it, and we need to be advocates for it with all these deepened projects.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Next question is from Fink CD. Chinese in-kind... God, I'm glad this is going to you. Chinese in-kind creation versus US cash creates ETF models. Who wins long-term and why? Thank goodness we've got a TradFi expert in the house.
No, it's... So I guess it's important to... the backstory here, obviously, if you guys don't know already, there's going to be Chinese ETFs in Hong Kong are going to be launching in about 3 ETF providers are launching ETFs on Tuesday this week, right?
Okay.
And they've competing very much on fees. Like, some of the fees are lower than the US equivalents in terms of what they're offering to their investors, and it's been highly promoted in Hong Kong. And there was a lot of excitement about this. Now, we covered this a bit in last week's Q&A, and that's the question of, it's definitely not going to be as much of an impact on the markets as the US were. No way. The liquidity won't be there. Even if Chinese investors can invest through it in a permission stock connect thing, they are not going to have the same amount of demand as the US. However, having said that, the point into the question more specifically is the way in which these ETFs work. And it's very different from the US. Now, just explaining what in-kind and cash models or cash creates. In-kind redemption and issuance model is when the asset itself is used to buy the shares. In this case, Bitcoin in, shares come out. You can take your Bitcoin to the ETF provider, you get shares out of it, you redeem your shares, you get Bitcoin back, right?
Right.
The US, the SEC was vehemently against that. The issuers themselves want it, but the US was vehemently against it, and the SEC was vehemently against it. And so they've had to go for the cash model, which is many more steps. And I actually did a post on this on coinbureau.com, which I'll link to below, in terms of how convoluted the in-cash version is. Because there's an extra step. You have to go and you have to have a cash custodian, and you have to go and have, you go and put the Bitcoin in, they have to sell it for cash, use the cash, then go and issue the shares. The AP and the market makers on the equity side, as well as the stocks, as well as the crypto side, have to go, and there's multiple layers to it. And obviously that adds to fees, right? So it becomes a more expensive product, and it's inefficient, and the issuers don't like it either. And then there's also the question of tracking error, which is a big thing for ETFs, right? In this, I'll refer to a recent BitMEX blog post that looked at other ETFs, the in-kind versus the in-cash. And for one, at least 70% or so of the AUM on ETFs is in-kind, right? So it's like, that's what's normally the norm in terms of the most valuable ETFs. And then in terms of tracking error, there is substantial tracking error for the cash equivalent ones.
Right.
So obviously it's inefficient for the investors. They're not getting the full-on exposure as they want. And you have this tracking error, which adds to costs. So it's an inefficient product. Now, it will be interesting. Well, obviously, the in-kind will win long-term because it has been proven to do the case. And if you've got tracking error for so long, you're not going to want to invest in a product that's always going to, and if you have an equivalent that's in an in-kind version, you're going to want to invest in that because it can be more efficient and more cost-effective. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how it plays out. It will be interesting to see if these particular products are able, if there's studies done to see how the ETFs in Hong Kong are better able to track the price of Bitcoin, whether this will potentially force the hand of the SEC, whether the ETF providers in the US will use it as a reason to go back to the SEC being like, look, this makes no sense. Look at these ETFs in Hong Kong. They're perfectly efficient. There's no questions of concerns about money laundering or KYC, because that's one of the concerns the SEC had. They perfectly function in. These are top tier providers. So I think it will win in the long term. And I think that this could potentially be a reason for these ETF providers in the US to use it as an excuse to go back to the SEC and get in-kind redemption versions in the US.
So you think the Hong Kong spot ETFs could actually be bullish more because of the model they use rather than any sort of inflows they're likely to see?
Yeah,
it could actually change the way the spot ETFs in the US are run.
Yeah, I think that, and that's because of the fact that although Hong Kong, many people are making this assumption, Chinese investors can get exposure to Bitcoin through an ETF now. It's not easy permissionless capital flow from China to Hong Kong. It's permissioned. The CCP decides what goes in and out. Now, of course, it is bullish if the CCP does actually pivot and say, we love crypto, you can invest in crypto, and then they'll have an opportunity to easily send funds to Hong Kong through the Stock Connect program, through the Shanghai Stock Exchange. But the CCP doesn't, they don't seem to be doing that right now. And of course, they're worried about capital flows. They're worried about people getting too crazy speculatively with these assets, which is why even on the stock side of it, some of these ETFs, but just to give an example back to what we said last year in the week in the Q&A, in terms of like how crazy Chinese investors could be potentially if they had the opportunity to invest in ETFs like this, there was a gold-based ETF that was traded in Hong Kong that basically depegged to the premium of 30% because people in China were so badly wanted to get exposure to gold through this easy liquid form in a stock. And that uses a precursor potentially. Could we see that on the Bitcoin side? But again, it comes down to actual flows, and it comes down to what will be allowed from whether you think that the CCP will be more likely to allow people to get access to Bitcoin through Stock Connect than gold. So
it's so fascinating, the whole kind of Chinese crypto scene in general. Like
massive,
Chinese they're crazy for it. They love it.
They love it.
And I think they understand it on a more fundamental level than many investors in the developed world. And yet, there's this kind of weird situation where it's not banned, but it's there are strictures in place. There are fairly strident regulations. It's not very easy to use. But at the same time, there's just this huge potential pool of capital.
Yeah, I think it's also a situation of the reason I'm slightly bullish on it for the longer term is I think that command and control economies and governments like the Chinese, as long as they can control things, they're happy with it. So they'd far rather people were able to buy crypto through a system they can control and view and monitor, right? And they can, also permission. So if you like, fits into their whole social credit kind of thing as well. So the point of the matter there is, as opposed to permissionless stuff, right? People can easily send crypto across borders and evade the capital controls of China, which is, they mainly worry about capital controls, capital flood.
Yeah.
Cool. Next question is from 19 Dario 86. And this is actually a very cool, thought-provoking question. And he says, hypothetically, if Satoshi reappeared, would they be able to sell all their BTC?
Oh yeah, that's a great question, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I guess if Satoshi were to unmask themselves, the only way that they could prove that they were Satoshi would be to access the 1 million odd BTC that are sitting in that Genesis wallet. Yeah. And all they'd need to do would be to move 1 sat.
Yeah, exactly.
And like so far, no one has managed to do this. And obviously there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down there. But yeah, it's a great question, because if they were able to move 1 sat from that wallet, suddenly Bitcoin's supply has grown by 1 million. Yeah. So this would be huge, and it would almost it would tank the price because suddenly all this new supply is hitting the market. Now, I think in the short term, it would be very bad for Bitcoin's price, very bad. But I think in the long term, I think the demand is there to absorb those 1 million BTC. Yeah. But it certainly would be a bad supply shock in the short term. So would they be able to sell? I mean, I guess they would, but they would have to accept that they would be selling at a much lower price, just because all of a sudden that BTC is accessible. Yeah. And obviously that's before you get into all the implications of like, well, hang on a sec, who is this person? It would be, so I think really Satoshi, if they are still alive, I think they're in a tricky situation really, because if they were to reappear and prove their existence by moving, by accessing this wallet, there'd be so many questions. I'm not sure even all that money would be worth it.
You've thought a lot about this, guys. Is this the reason you haven't touched the coins in your Genesis wallet?
Well, no comment. But yeah, I think it is fascinating, because this is the crazy thing, or one of the many crazy things about Bitcoin, is that, not only is it so well designed, but it also had this kind of perfect ending, if you like, the story or that chapter of the story with the creator just disappearing and leaving so many unanswered questions. But that is part of Bitcoin's strength. That is part of why Bitcoin is so, is not going anywhere, because there is no creator.
Yeah, exactly.
Every other cryptocurrency, no matter how decentralized it claims to be or tries to be, there is always going to be a Vitalik figure, an Anatoly figure, or whoever. Bitcoin, no. So, but yeah, they would be able to sell it, but they would have to accept that the price would tank. I mean, I'm not going to give it. I can't even imagine how much it would tank to, but.
I totally agree with your thesis, and I think that I prefer really, like, whoever he is, wherever he is, I do hope he's still alive. I do hope he never does reappear and show himself, just because of the esteem of it, right? The whole notion of this creator, it's a figure, and we are all Satoshi, right? That's a cool, we are all part of this network that, there is no essential person, and it could be wherever he is. It will live on, which is a great, narrative for crypto and Bitcoin itself.
Yeah. If he, she, they are still alive, I hope there was another wallet with plenty of BTC, and that they're living the high life from that on.
Enjoying,
Okay, Stefan. After that very philosophical question, Stefan Kugel weighs in goes even deeper and says, when Lambo, and if which Lambo?
Which Lambo?
Do you know anything? So okay, when Lambo? Well, fine, maybe. Early 2025, perhaps.
I mean, I don't know, man. Yeah, it's like first in the bear market last year, it was will Lambo, and now it's like will Lambo, and now it's like when Lambo, and then the decision on what kind of Lambo I'm looking at on my screen is also volatile. To be able to go to on the markets are up, it's like an SVs type stuff, and the event stores where it comes down, then it's like a 10-year-old in Colorado or something.
So okay, so you know some models about
it. I'm just enjoying looking
at. I've done some
DYOR on Lambos. We are in Dubai, Habibi, But yeah, to be honest, at the end of the day, although I would be cool to own a Lambo, I suppose, it's practically, I don't have a car yet. I live right near the office, I don't know if I'll ever need to use it, because I'm only probably on the weekends. And I don't, it's just quick and easy for me to travel. But scooter traffic is a bit of a problem, especially in this area. So practically, as much as like I want to, get it and think about it and, flex in a Lambo, problem is like, when am I going to use it? The practicalities of it. you know. But
you'd use a Lambo. You definitely. Nick is 100% going to get.
There
a Lambo.
is a parking spot, you know. We have with my name there. It's just waiting for it to be next.
We've got 2 parking spots at this office. My Toyota is in one of them. The other one is waiting to be filled by Nick's Lamborghini Conquistador.
But to be fair, your Toyota fared pretty well last week. It saved you in a few occasions with regards to the weather. I mean, you picked up our videographer when we needed in here, and we managed to get us a token 2049 without having to worry about cab liquidity, you know, lack of cabs because of the situation. So that Lambo couldn't do that. So there were a lot of flooded Lambos.
You don't want a low riding car when it rains.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Final question, and this is the real important question. This is where the real alpha is coming in.
This is what the whole thing's been building up to.
Guys. Mm-hmm. And that is from Neil945, and he's asking, Guy, what is the new diet? Looking super lean, man.
Neil945 is actually my alt account. I have lost a bit of weight. Fewer carbs. I haven't been drinking this year. I don't drink much anyway. But no booze this year. I did have a couple of beers last weekend, but that was it. And I fast once a week. So Mondays I don't eat. I don't eat from Sunday evening to Tuesday morning, which means Mondays, which were, let's face it, tough enough, are even tougher.
The days when you guys have to do the news, right?
Yeah.
We know in the office now to be very careful around Guy on Mondays, because that's when you usually hear screaming coming from the office, like he's just in an irritable mood. But yeah, I think fasting is definitely a hack, a health hack. Like I should actually try it. But I feel, especially with building muscle and the kind of stuff, like the notion of not getting my protein in the day, my daily allowance of protein kind of scares me. But I think it's important because for mental acuity as well, right? Fasting is very important for mental acuity.
Yeah,
so.
I do think it makes me sharper, even when I'm not thinking about food, which is quite a lot. Yeah. So there we are. That's it. Also less cardio, more weights.
Okay.
Which seems to help.
That works,
It's good for you.
Cool. And paddle, lots of paddle.
And paddle, lots of paddle. Yeah, lots of very competitive paddle.
Very competitive. Cool, guys. Thank you very much for your questions. This was great. As you know, if you guys want to submit them, you know what to do. We've got our Instagram link to below, and you can put them there, and we'll try and come to as many of them as we can at the end of the week. This is great, Guy. Thanks for coming back, man.
Good to be back.
Yeah,
Good to be back.
And hopefully we'll see you next week then.
See you again soon. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.